Before we get started, I'd just like to do an introduction to the group for people that maybe haven't been here previously. BCS Learning Development Specialist Group is one of the about 50 specialist groups in BCS. We try and focus on people that are involved in the development, delivery, or management of learning to IT and communications professionals and users. That's a wide span of interest, but hopefully somewhere in there is something that you're interested in. And if you're not on our mailing list, then please sign up in the BCS portal and join the group. But that's our focus as a specialist group. A bit of profile, the interests. We did a survey of the interests of members of the group a while back. It's very roughly split between end user skills trainers, about 18%, professional skills training, which is much more around things like ITIL and service management, project management, technical skills training, which is much more vendor product training, university and education sector, all roughly about the same sort of percentage number of people. And then a third of the group are members who are just generally interested in IT skills related topics. And so as you can see, a wide range of people, but all around professional skills development type area. We have a webpage on the BCS website with some information about the group and the events we've got coming up. And we also have all of our past events for about the last 3 or 4 years, all been recorded, and you can find a playlist with all our past events there. We do have our own Twitter or X feed. So if you want to keep up to date with what's going on in the group and events that are coming up, then please sign up for that. And we have to give a plug for the book. The Learning Development Specialist Group was involved in co-authoring a book with SEDMA Europe, which is Training Directors Network. And if you want to find out about technical training management, then please go and get a copy of the book from the BCS bookshop. I'm sure Ian might say something about the publication and distribution process at some point tonight. We do have one event planned for February around CPD. We always try and do an event around continual professional development towards the beginning of the year. So this time we're going to be having a look at the CPD recording practices within BCS itself and some of the tools. So that's coming up in February. And if you have any other ideas, then please send them my way. And a number of our events are put forward by members of the group. And I'd love to have your thoughts as to what else would be really interesting to hear about in the learning development space. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ian Borthwick. Ian, I think you've been in BCS some time now, and it's been great working with you on the SEDMA book in the past. So I'd like to hand over to you and look forward to your talk, and then I'll come back on later on for questions.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'll start sharing. Let me just get my PowerPoint up. Not used to using Zoom, so just give me a second, please. Hopefully everybody can see that. If you can't, then you're missing out, unfortunately.
Yep, we got that.
So just, I only have one screen that works. So I will be looking down at my slides, which are my notes just here as well. So do bear with me for that. But anyway, welcome to my presentation on how to write and publish a book. I'll take you through the BCS publishing process in particular, which has been refined and adapted for over 20 years. And that will work from concept to getting started with a book proposal on through to delivery. And we've even asked a couple of existing authors for input on their experience of publishing with BCS. Kevin may be able to give you a couple of tips there as well. Right. So who are BCS Publishing? Well, we are the in-house publishing team for BCS, and we sit in the wholly owned commercial subsidiary, BCS Learning and Development Limited. And we publish under the imprint of BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT. We're currently a 4-person team covering books, commissioning and development. That's Heather Wood, as pictured. Editorial and production management, that's Florence Leroy, who is not pictured. And also sales and marketing direction, which is Charles, who is pictured here on the right-hand side. So I'm head of publishing, and I have oversight for all of our books, journals, publishing strategy, operations, and the day-to-day management of the core team. We publish upwards of 12 titles a year, with some 80 curated titles in print, and we focus on key disciplines for business and IT professionals, actively addressing the needs of BCS members, the industry and beyond, by supporting good practice adoption in professional communities. And this also includes study guides for candidates taking relevant BCS certifications and qualifications, which some of you may have seen or worked through. And our curated approach means that we update new editions of established titles, as well as looking at new titles focusing on emerging areas. And with that, we sell around 20,000 print units per year globally, we work across print and ebook distribution channels, from Amazon to Kobo to O'Reilly, as well as I think I mentioned earlier, selling directly through the BCS bookshop and also the BCS library. So let's move on to more the topic of today, which is, well, why write a book? So first things first, I'm not sure if you know, but there's roughly 2 to 4 million books published a year. So there's a very good opening question there of, well, what makes your book special? And it's a leading question, but the funny part is it's your experience, your expertise, and your engagement that makes your book special. Every book starts with a why, and as we'll see, it's not just a why, but also a who, a what, and a how. A good book focuses on a pain point, something that helps the reader to learn how to deal with that issue and grow as a professional. It's not an easy path to tread to write a book, but for those who dare, becoming an author can have many benefits. So here's a quick question then of what is a book good for on a professional level, or basically what's in it for me. So we've got a series of books you can see here, all came about for different reasons. They don't necessarily align with what we're going to put on top of them, which is these lovely comments, but they do register for each individual author as well. So the answer for why write a book and publish is really just well aligned with what BCS Publishing look for when we are commissioning a new book project. We're looking for author profile and influence, looking for book coverage and quality, and of course, community engagement. So in terms of professional development, writing a book can actually be a very strong demonstration of your own professional standing and achievements, as well as opening up opportunities for consulting or career advancement. In terms of platform building, writing a book can help to establish or strengthen your professional reputation, offering new levels of authority, influence, and credibility in your field, which couples well with speaking engagements. Making IT good for society is a core element to BCS. So books really can help me make a significant positive impact in your community by solving a problem or closing a knowledge gap. And finally, last but not least, is royalties. So BCS book finances won't necessarily buy you a yacht, but they could support your annual getaway. So we asked a couple of our authors about their experiences. Jay Mather, who wrote Super User Networks for Software Projects, and Christina Tina Lovelock, who co-authored Delivering Business Analysis. So we asked them, first of all, why did they write and publish a book with BCS? So Jane started with an idea for an article, but then realized she had much more to say she grew her work as she tried to capture the essence of her experience, advice, and opinions, and basically wrote the book that she wished she had read and hopes it helps someone else in their career. And Tina very much agrees. She wrote the book that she needed 10 years earlier in her career, and nothing existed in this space. So, what does a book publishing journey look like for an author? Cue the fancy slide. So, a book publishing journey covers a number of stages from concept to delivery. While straightforward in scope, it's very much an incremental and iterative process. At BCS Publishing, we work together with our authors throughout the whole journey as we aim to ensure quality, purpose, and sense checks throughout a book's life cycle. We ensure that authors have the support, guidance, and input they need, so that their work addresses the problem that the reader really needs help with. And this is where external reviewer feedback is essential. And so we look to our network of experts for every book we publish, checking that the book meets the needs of the audience. And this feedback, in turn, supports our authors in directing their experience, their expertise towards writing the book that the reader truly needs. BCS Publishing also arranged for cover and blurb creation with our authors, as well as promoting across the book industry. We also provide copy editing, typesetting support when the books go into production, and naturally sales, distribution, marketing, customer service, and royalties. So once you have a concept in mind for a book, we need to review it to see if it's one we can work up with you into a full proposal for investment appraisal. Now, the secret formula for a good book proposal is that it needs to identify a need or a problem from your community, define the target audience and how they will use the book, and also demonstrate how you're going to reach that target audience, not by yourself, but with BCS. We asked Jane and Tina this very question: what problem does your book solve? Jane noted there are plenty of books about change, about IT implementation, about learning and development, but her book lands on a unique model of super users, which serves as a joined-up approach to all. Tina's book provides BA leaders with guidance on how to create and maintain an effective business analysis service within an organization. It looks at the many challenges facing BA leaders, such as recruitment, performance management, improving maturity, and adoption of standards and software tools. But how do you validate the problem your book aims to solve and its relevance to the audience? You need evidence that your book idea will work. And to strengthen your book idea, it can be beneficial to engage with the community. You can do this in the following ways: public speaking, articles and blogs, via LinkedIn and online communities, plus training and coaching events. All of these help you to go deeper and further with your community. This also helps you to build your platform, increasing your visibility in the community, i.e., increasing your visibility to those who would in turn adopt your book. Big question now: why publish with BCS? Well, at this point, you may be wondering why BCS Publishing, and indeed, why not self-publish? Well, it's a very deep and interesting industry that we've got in the publishing world. It all comes down to your own personal preferences, actually. But what you may be asking yourself about how to go about writing a book is what it actually takes. What does 4 to 6 months of writing actually look like? What if something gets in the way? What are the delivery expectations going to be? What happens if something goes wrong along the way? What happens once a book is written? And what can authors expect from BCS or indeed any other good publisher in terms of support? So why choose BCS? Well, any good book needs to find its audience. At BCS Publishing, we are feedback focused. We look to basically make sure that books receive external feedback all the way through so that we can, sorry, my notes are all messed up here. We can help enhance boost the credibility of our work and reassure readers of its reliability by reaching out to our expert reviewers. And author feedback actually is part of this, is really important. It's not only about what our reviewers say, but where the authors are and what their peers tell them. And when it comes down to the process of developing and delivering a book, it's really important that we manage mutually agreeable expectations for what's going to be delivered when, so that we can also work with the external reviewers to help bring them into the fold, make sure everything lines up, and eventually also launch that out in terms of marketing of that particular book. Reputation is really important here. This, as we mentioned, it can definitely, a book can enhance your own reputation as an author in the tech community. We have a very broad community of diverse specialist groups, reaching out to academics, professionals, end users, and enthusiasts. And hence we have actually a very strong platform that we can enhance author marketing through to reach those audiences. And that's our pitch to you about what we do. Excuse me. So we asked Jane and Tina, why did they decide to publish with BCS? So Jane had worked on technology projects for all of her career and wondered who could be possibly better to partner with than BCS. And Tina agrees, identifying that BCS already has a range of great titles relating to business analysis, which means that we have a great access to the right community. And as you may know, we have market-leading business analysis certifications in that space. So that covers off a lot about the authoring, but there are actually more than one way of getting involved with BCS Publishing, and indeed other publishers. Other ways of getting involved include reviews. As we noted, we rely on our expert network of reviewers for constructive feedback on book ideas and proposals, looking at the problems the authors have identified in the community to help us curate a strong body of practice. Where we publish a book, we're also looking to secure community engagement, and referrals and promotion are essential to ensuring books are adopted. And we also work very closely with our colleagues in BCS Learning and Development Limited, who focus on CPD, apprenticeship certifications, qualifications, and are always looking to grow the stable of recognized subject matter experts. And we work in unison with them to try and feed and build those networks. So finally, well, thank you for attending today and for listening to me. As a next step, you can browse the BCS Bookshop through the link provided, or if you'd like to engage, you can send a book idea through the link here, bcs.org/books/idea. We'll take you to our Be Involved form. If you have any questions, you can ask me now. Otherwise, I'm very happy to follow up separately as our Heather for any book commissioning ideas or proposal questions, or Charles for any book sales, promotions, or adoption questions. But for now, over to you for any questions I can help with. You're most welcome.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to start with the first one and say the scariest piece in all of this is the proposal. How do you get started with really trying to put that proposal together in a way that you're writing for people that you don't know, and trying to sell your concept? How can you help with that?
I think if you have a concept for a book, you're going to need to test it out. A former colleague of mine used to work on events, and she always said the key to anything is subject, audience, and format. So once you've got your subject and you can try and pin down your audience, that's when you can really start to think about the format. So while some people come up with an idea for a subject and they think it might be useful to somebody, whether that becomes a book is actually a very good question. A book has a certain kind of shelf life that it needs, a certain kind of Some have a more immediacy. Some of our BCS user guides are going to be a bit more of immediate kind of technology user focused, but others will need to be sitting on a shelf for some time and therefore need a slightly different level of coverage. And I think basically once you can start to think through more clearly about what the topic is, who the audience is, and therefore what the book needs to look like, you can start to build out your map of the book, really. And that starts with a table of contents, an outline. You start to build more detail into that. You start to build out what would actually be covered where. And that is, what we work with our authors with and our external reviewers. You can start as simply as a concept like that, and then take that and say, does this meet the kind of things that we're hearing from industry? Is this what other people in the industry or who are potential readers are looking for? Is this a problem they've got that they need to get solved? And I think what you want to have there is some fast feedback loops rather than getting stuck, really. As much as any part of the journey is scary, it's what we're trying to do is to build up to a sense of where a book really fits. So you start with an idea, becomes a bit more a concept, becomes a proposal, goes to a contract once it gets passed through. The contract outlines mutually agreeable expectations for when different chapters are going to be written, how long they're going to be, that they can get reviewed. And basically you start to piece by piece build out this picture of the book, what it's going to do, how it's going to work, and when it's going to be delivered. And it's that process which really allows you to counter your fears, build your confidence, and move forwards with that platform. And you kind of, once you know that there is a concept that you're really concerned about, it can be fairly straightforward to start to test that and see if it's something that other people feel is an issue, and therefore start to build up a community of support, a community of practice interested in adopting that book. And that is where you're more onto a winner, basically.
One of the questions we've got here, how important is it for an author to already have a readership/audience? These days, it seems a number of authors already have readerships from blogs, social media, mailing lists before they start.
I think it is important to have some experience there. Author profile can be actually very important. The level of influence can be important when it's a very busy field. There's quite a lot of attention spent in lots of other places than just looking at a book. We do work still with first-time authors. Where we do, we kind of looking at levels of seniority, levels of experience, levels of outreach that they can have in their network, because it's going to be really important to us and to them actually in the long term to say, well, is it worth your while doing this project? Is it solving a problem, and is it going to reach a sufficient number of people to really pave the way for it to have been published? At the end of the day, we are working in the commercial subsidiary for BCS, therefore we have to gauge our investments wisely and make sure that we are going to invest BCS money into a project that's going to pay off for BCS, pay off for the author as well. But with that, we look to not just establish like new authors and new ideas, but we're looking to curate those ideas over time. So we're kind of in it for the longer term in many ways. We're looking for the quality. We're looking for those ideas which do stand out as well, for those ideas which people note they've got a need for, even if they don't realize that they've got that need. That is where it's often a question of triangulation, really. Once somebody knows there's a number of different issues that people are facing, like in their company and other people's companies within the wider industry, then you've got something which may be quite special. And the other part to that is being able to explain it well. So I think a lot of us feel like we do it a lot, but writing well is actually a very good skill, and writing for an audience, telling them what they need to know rather than simply trying to dump every piece of knowledge on them is something which you need to work on and build experience in doing. There is feedback that helps you to do that, but there's nothing better than actually living that. One of the best pieces of advice I ever had when I was trying to get into the publishing industry is, well, what are you doing about getting experience of working in publishing rather than sending out, applications? Am I getting involved in working in bookshops or libraries or anything like that, or charity shops to help sell books, get a better understanding of what it takes? And it's that kind of being purposeful about what you want to achieve, working to either write blogs, get involved in communities, talk about these kind of issues that are being experienced. If you really want a book to work, you have to know that it's going to be delivered. It's going to reach that community, and I think that audience, and I think that's something that we should be testing all the way through. So, it's as important as you want it to be, really. If you want to be able to reach that audience, then you have to be able to reach that audience, and we're here to help enhance that, to work with you to make sure you've got the good experience, got the widest possible reach for a book idea that we can take forwards, basically.
Great, thank you. We've got several questions queued up, so I'm going to keep firing them at you. Do you have a minimum size that constitutes a viable book?
So that depends on the nature of the book and where it's going to be aimed. We tend to, we don't as much as other publishers might, is what I would say. So what we want to do is make sure that, there is that perceived value for money, but there's also the nature of the book and the problem that it's trying to solve. Is it going to reach a suitable level for people to be able to understand that concept fully, understand the practical approaches they can take, and be able to address them? We don't want to have random extra content for no particular reason. It's actually more difficult to write a shorter book than it is to write a longer book at times, and that is where being able to simply write longer but then edit down and distill is a really important skill that goes into this. But generally speaking, yes, if you want to have a book with a spine, it has to have a certain number of words. And we do include that at the book proposal stage when you're ready to get there. It varies by topic. It varies by the depth of coverage, the depth and breadth of coverage that is really needed. A user guide is going to be smaller and shorter. For instance, the current edition of, for instance, Business Analysis is nearly 400 pages long, and that's in its 4th edition. And that's been developed over time. So it's become a bit of like a tool that is used by business analysts across the industry. It didn't start that long, but it has grown as the discipline has got a bit broader, got a bit deeper, and more knowledge is actually available there. So, we don't look to make books bigger and bigger. We will actually look at finding ways of having core methodologies, think about the techniques which might surround them or particular applications. So delivering business analysis isn't business analysis, the book. It sits above that. It sits at the organizational level, thinking about managers and their needs, leaders, and how do they develop a service. So it's building on other things. And I think if we think about knowledge as different building blocks like that, then we don't have to worry too much about what minimum extent is. We have to think about, is it actually solving the problem? Is it going to be sufficient to make a book out of it? Or is it something else? We have actually been experimenting with some other potential outputs through the BCS library for some member exclusives, to BCS library exclusives, which are available there, which are shorter. They're almost like chapter form, covering in the same kind of way, new topics that we wouldn't otherwise be able to publish in a book, but we're looking to take that steadily as we go forwards, because we need them to address actual knowledge gaps in the portfolio. I think beyond that, it's always a good question of where you can place a blog or an article, I mean, IT now do look for authors as well, and that becomes that's a great crucible for pitching an idea as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Give you a couple of practical ones here. What's the likely commission an author would get from a book sale? Do you need to have an agent? Find an agent, or what else do we get? Who takes the risks? For example, do BCS pay in advance against future royalties?
so anything, I mean, obviously, naturally, any book that we publish doesn't start making money until it's published. Until we can get it out into the market and start selling it through to the wider BCS membership, it's not going to make us any money. So that is where we view everything in it as an investment appraisal. The book royalties, they can vary. We have a fairly standard royalty rate of sort of 10 to 12.5%. Sometimes it can be slightly higher than that, but it really depends on the nature of the book and the audience, whether the author has the presence to be able to drive that forwards, and also on the requirements for when we need that to be delivered. So we are here to invest in our authors. We are taking a risk on every author, just as they're taking a risk on BCS Publishing. And that's why it becomes a mutual investment of time and effort. And we want to see it pay off for authors as much as we want to see it pay off for BCS.
Yeah. What skills or knowledge does one need for book publishing which are different from those needed to produce, say, research articles? Similarly, what are the different skills for books compared to producing teaching material at, say, an undergraduate level? And there was another question: is it necessary to study creative writing in order to make the book interesting?
Gosh, those are two very different questions. So if you want to work in publishing, the publishing industry is it's also broad and wide as well. So academic publishing has a number of different areas that you could work in. So we have interaction with journal publishing as well as conference proceedings at BCS. We work obviously with the IT Now team who have a stable of columnists and other kinds of authors who write slightly shorter form. In terms of writing for university courses, so
it's more the comparison of is it similar when you're writing a BCS book? Is it the same skills that you need to write an undergraduate course, or is it more creative skills? What type of skills do you need to have in order to write effectively? I think the questions that are being asked.
That's a really good question. We often looking for people who have the experience, the lived experience of that area that they're looking to cover. Are they fundamentally competent in that area? Do they have the credibility to tell other people about that area? That can be different from when you're working, for instance, with a subject matter expert and a course developer who can work in unison to develop, kind of learning materials which are suitable for a particular course type. But when you bring that to market, that can be it's kind of different approach to how it's perceived. If you see what I mean, an audience wouldn't want to know the person who's written a book knows what they're talking about, can explain what they're talking about, and it's not, it's not something which is coming from second hand, it's coming from first hand. That is where there's a slightly different approach that can be needed. It doesn't mean that people who work on university courses, for instance, don't have a place to do. There's actually massive industry in educational publishing where you might not always get mentioned on the books, but there is actually really strong requirements for really good study guidance. New qualifications are always being launched, and new publications are always being updated in new ways now. So there's a great level of opportunity in the industry. When it comes to creative writing, well, I don't think there's any harm ever in people doing creative writing if that's something they're interested in doing. I think the whole creative genre is something that everyone can have their own take on. Not everybody has to be a creative writer, no. Does it help with conveying your own message? Perhaps. If it does, then definitely lean into that. I think what people are looking for is that kind of credibility, that authority. You know, at BCS, we work with our community to build that authority, to build that credibility. BCS as a badge won't mean anything if we don't have that strong community backing it up, holding up the standards. And that is where we look to make sure, you know, everybody has their chance, everybody has their specialty, everybody has an opportunity, really.
Thank you. So on top of the elevator pitch, synopsis, target audience, what else would BCS expect from me if I wanted to write a book?
So I think the best way of dealing with that is to go through use the ideas form to start with. We start to ask a number of different questions, not just about, I mean, it's partly about the book. We're talking about the coverage, talking about the quality, we're talking about the audience, we're talking about how we can reach them, but also thinking about the wider market. Sometimes it can be difficult to understand if the book is going to be unique. Is it going to be unique by the time it's published as well? There are a few questions worth looking at to make sure that we're taking the right risks together, basically. But there's more. It's more detail comes. It's not a fixed kind of yes or no. It takes layers of, you know, development and review to get to a really strong appraisal for any kind of book investment like that. So book proposal might go through a number of different variations, and at times we've gone through, you know, in good faith with authors, and we've gone through and made every adjustment we can to a book proposal, but it hasn't quite met that need in the market. And so actually gone back to sort of first principles again and said, well, actually, we've reviewed this concept, it hasn't really worked, but perhaps if we change tack and start to look at that concept for a slightly different audience, you know, it's either more detailed or less detailed. It's finding the right niche for it, which is really what we look to do. So it's not straightforward as it looks. It is, you know, iterative and incremental at times. So it does take a bit of patience, but we're very patient on this side of the fence as well.
I hope I'm not breaking confidence, but I've got to say, I've seen a few proposals, and some of them have been spectacularly well written, and some have been spectacularly poorly written. But you can really tell when you've got a proposal that just makes sense.
Yeah,
and it just comes across.
And sometimes it's when you read it and it comes, you know, it comes off the page, you know, and you think, actually, yes, that one does fit a need. It's something that you start to recognize and identify with, and that's really important.
Okay. Good questions coming here about services. What services would BCS bring to my book, e.g., editing, proofreading, typesetting, keeping me to time, all of those things?
So we're a 4-person team, I think, as I mentioned. So my production manager very much deals with those kind of suppliers who help with that, and we're all involved in quality management along the way, in quality assurance. Can we keep all authors to time? Well, that's where we actually need authors who are fairly capable of meeting those timescales. That's where particularly we look at what's mutually agreeable. It can be very difficult, depending on the stage of life, how busy you are, you know, in work, outside of work, to do something like that. It may be something on your wish list, and, you know, do have a look at it. Yeah, we provide as many professional services as we can in the development of a book. But if that central part of the author with knowledge, the authority, the credibility, and the ability to write that book isn't quite there, then it may get off to a false start, basically. And that's why we try and stage everything from idea all the way through proposal. And rather than just say, okay, great, you've done a proposal, now give me a manuscript in 6 months' time, and get 6 months down the line, we now take a very different approach, and we look at what's the first elements of that book that can be delivered. Is it matching up with what it said on the tin? at the beginning, and how can we potentially help enhance that, advance that as publishers. So we will work with our suppliers where we need to, particularly that's normally at the end stage of a book proposal, once the manuscript is finally written, book project. But if we need to, we can step in early in that with suppliers. And what we do all the way through is look at making sure that we're working with readers and expert reviewers to get the quality right, to get the pitch right.
I guess this is one of the big differences working with a professional publisher than self-publishing, because you've got people that are reviewing, proofreading, doing the whole process for you.
I mean, we have a team that helps to do this, so we try and make sure everything gets handled appropriately through that team. We look at it from a quality perspective, we look at it from a market perspective when it comes through. Is it going to fit the quality criteria? Is it solving a problem? Is it going to be able to reach this audience that we're talking about? Is that audience going to be big enough to make it worthwhile for that author to work with us? That's really an important question as well. Self-publishing for some people works. It's a great way for new authors to experiment as well. It won't necessarily get you the broadest reach. We work basically across, we've got an actually really broad platform of print and ebook resellers internationally. It takes some good management, takes some good promotion and engagement to build up on that. And that's where, BCS is not trying to say, oh, you can't do this by yourself. We're trying to say, you can do this and we can do this. So what can we do together? It makes it more special.
Interesting question here about copyright. If I write a book with BCS, who will own the copyright? If BCS sales are not meeting expectations, will I be able to sell it through other channels?
So we actually sell it through all the different channels that are feasible as far as possible. And if there's one thing that we want to do, it's sell books, sell the content, get it licensed. So we work with training providers. We still work with some universities already in terms of getting books adopted onto courses and potentially licensed through into those courses. So we are very much open to all the commercial opportunities that are out there. Copyright is one of those questions. What is it that you want to achieve by holding on to your copyright? Would be a good question. If we are going to work with somebody, we need the commercial rights to be able to go and sell that book. Copyright at times they might need to keep, people might need to keep hold of it for themselves. We do have books which have authors retaining copyright. Mostly it's most straightforward and most simple to assign copyright to BCS for the period of time that that book will be in print. If a book no longer meets the needs of the market, and you can tell that when basically the sales start to dry up, that is when we can either look at, well, is there a new version which needs to be developed to make sure people feel that there's, it's still up to date. And that can happen. Audience perception can be fickle at times. And if not, then we can come to an end of term agreement with that author and that book can be returned to them. We've done that on a number of occasions. That's how we have a curated list. We don't have the biggest list in the world. Some publishers will publish hundreds of books a year. We are focused on curating a list of knowledge and practice that works for the industry now, and for the next few years, really. And that's why we try and make sure we stay on top of that cycle, keep things up to date. And if they are no longer required, then we can retire them. But we're basically there to work with our authors to get the best for the period of time that we can, working with them.
Slightly different question. I want to write for people at beginner/student level. Do BCS publish at all levels of knowledge?
We do publish at different levels of knowledge, but we don't publish any book at any level, as it were. So at beginner level, we have just started the BCS user guides series, and we're working with some fairly experienced authors there who also have a very strong technological background in the areas that they're covering. So in that particular case, we're kind of looking for really highly deep technical skills and really strong authoring skills, because the requirement is to be able to explain things really clearly in not as many words as you might get in a book which has, you know, a little bit more depth to it. It might have a bit more, you know, buffering around the sides of it, because it needs to go into more detail, because somebody actually needs to be able to apply it rather than just start to become aware of it and understand it. We do have different pitches at different levels. The best way of getting involved in things like that is to reach out to us. You know, with any idea, we're very happy to review new ideas. We also have potential opportunities around, you know, reviewing in that kind of space to get a good idea. It helps the person get a good idea of what proposals look like, what manuscripts look like. You know, it's difficult to say without knowing that person's background as to what might be a good opportunity for them, but it may not be what they think at first. It may be what we can actually help to find with them. We may not be able to find anything, you know, there's no guarantees, but I think it's a good opportunity to work to try and find out what can fit in the gap between where we are and where they are, and look at those new opportunities for guidance at beginners, student levels, or higher up. I mean, we have apprenticeships now through the BCS Learning Development Team from level 3, I think, up to level 6. You know, so it's, you know, we're very much focused on that sort of post 16 and or graduate level as a starting place. Depends on what the topic is, depends on how much it's needed, depends on what we can do to really bring it to the relevant market. You may find that there's a really good idea, but BCS aren't as well placed as another publisher would be to reach that particular market. And, you know, we have to admit that and recognize where there's a better opportunity that we can help an author find their way.
Actually fits really well with another question. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right, Kevin, go ahead. I just wanted to ask one question before it's available. But Kevin, you can finish up.
I would say, would you advise against self-publishing if my idea didn't fit the BCS subject profile? If so, how would you suggest I find another publisher?
Well, we're not here to stop anybody doing what they want to do, is what I'd say. You know, we are here to try and work with authors where we feel we can help, you know, where we've got a pitch that we can put together with them to reach that audience. So if you know, we have had at times books that we can't take forwards because they wouldn't work for our audience, or they wouldn't work in terms of the scope of coverage. We have made suggestions to those authors about who they might like to go and publish with. It's actually better in many ways. You know, if you see an author who's published with the same publisher their entire life, you know, versus an author who's potentially published with, you know, this publisher, that publisher, and the other publisher, I kind of rather work with the second, because they've got a different experience. They know, you know, they hold us accountable, which is always a good challenge to have. But it's also, they've got that kind of profile, that reach, which shows that they're really engaged in what they're doing. They're really, really knowledgeable about authoring and have had the experience, or the, you know, what, I don't know quite right way of putting it, you know, got the war wounds or whatever from having gone through it. So, you know, we wouldn't advise anybody against doing anything they feel is appropriate for themselves. We just may not be able to help them directly. You know, if we can't help you directly, we'll try and help you directly.
Yeah, hi, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm writing an introductory book, Introduction to Computing, for my audiences, secondary school students in Nigeria. I'm in chapter 3 of my book. This is actually my third book, but my first book in IT technology. Where can BCS come in? I mean, what sort of services could they provide for me in this regard? Considering that I think I've gone to chapter 3, and it's going to be about a 12 chapter book. What services can be provided in this regard?
So standardly, we're not a direct service provider, if you see what I mean. So we don't provide the direct sort of publishing services on a sort of contract basis to individual authors. If you were able to fill in the book ideas form and potentially we can take that to proposal, we can look at whether there's scope for bringing the book into the BCS publishing portfolio, as an official part of the portfolio. I mean, and that's fundamentally open to anybody. I mean, caveats are that we need to know the profile and the influence of the person writing the book. We need to know the coverage, the requirements of the market, whether there's going to be that strong, product audience fit for it, and whether there's competition in that particular space. So it's something that we would look at. We would try and get an early gauge on. Sometimes we do have existing books that they might cover very similar topics, in which case it'd be very difficult for us to fit that into an already kind of well curated portfolio. But the questions are what it looks like fundamentally. So that's where the ideas form actually comes in quite usefully, because it starts to help us to build a picture of what we can do to help that particular author to take their book further. And if we can't help, then we will get to that as soon as we possibly can, because there's no point in us, we don't want to hold on to ideas, give ourselves extra work that's just sitting there. We want to get through the ideas, make sure we have a clear guide on whether we can publish something like that, and if we can, then what is the next step that we can take to validate that. So that's why it's really important for authors to reach out with their own networks to sort of get that sense of first validation, and we bring this additional validation. We try and give that third party that peer review that's required, but also get that market review that helps you to understand if it's a good commercial opportunity that BCS can serve, not service.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're getting close to time, so I've got one good last question here for you, which is, how can someone who may not actually want to write a book get involved in the other opportunities, such as reviewing, proofreading, etc.?
So that's a really good question, and actually the ideas form does cater to that, and we put it out there because it's very much a be involved form, but the best way of us gauging it is as an idea form, because while the authors may come to us with, I've got a concept, I want to write this and develop this, etc. A good idea can come from anywhere. A good idea for a book that's actually needed could come from anywhere, and that's why we're very open to saying, well, actually, what is it our readers are looking for? If you have an idea, please share it through the form. If you want to be involved, please share that through the form. And we try to ask a few questions with that form in terms of what the kind of areas are, what kind of experiences, what their particular interests are. And with that, we can sort of take that further. It depends on the opportunities we have in hand. And, that will come up in the future, because we can't guarantee as well. You want to review something on ITIL. That's why, ITIL is licensed through PeopleSet, as far as I'm aware. So that's where we wouldn't tend to do something on that particular topic. However, we might still be looking at things in the IT service management space, or thinking about things which suits the core requirements of an IT team. We're trying to get a title that works for every member of a business and IT team. And obviously that's a very fast developing space at times, but there's also certain competencies which will be delivered over time, certain capabilities that any IT team need to have nowadays. A lot of the time when you look around, you see lots of IT teams are very busy. They have to prioritize stuff, roadmap stuff, do everything like that, because there's so much work on that they need a chance to find ways of filtering it and working their way through it. Now that's a challenge in and of itself. And what can we do as publishers that helps people in those kind of situations to solve that. What other ideas are people experiencing? You know, what problems are they noting? And you know, we're very open to people sharing those with us, and then we can see if we can turn that into, you know, something as a next step. Can we triangulate that? Can we work with our colleagues to identify, is this something they're hearing about? Is it something that they have a good idea of somebody who could help us to take it to the next level, you know, and potentially start to develop our proposal, in which case the original idea suggester would be a good person to review that with, to see if it validates against what they thought was needed in the first place. So we're very open to that. We won't be able to necessarily advance every idea. We won't necessarily be able to advance every review request, but you know, we have a wide scope. We try and make sure that we engage with authors, reviewers, and make sure that our audience is fully involved. And as you can see through our LinkedIn page, which is not listed here, but if you search for BCS Publishing on LinkedIn, you should be able to find our showcase page. There's often outreach for endorsement on new books, which is a key thing that we look for. So where those opportunities come up, please do put yourself forwards and you will definitely be considered. I can't again guarantee that we'll select everybody because we have a limited number of endorsements that we can actually fulfill for any particular book. But we are trying to make sure that we are working with that audience, getting that feedback. So do suggest your idea. You know, it is worth it. And if we can't do something with it, then we will get back to you about that as well.
Great, thank you. I would say, as somebody that's been involved in a couple of books as reviewer, as proposal reviewer, as proofreader, it's a fascinating process to get involved with, and definitely one aspect of BCS that often gets overlooked, but a really important area. It's like I have bookcases stacked full of BCS publications, so it's like it's a fun thing to volunteer and get involved with. So if you've got, as Ian said, if you've got things that you'd like to just say you're interested, fill in that form, and at some point, random point in the future, you might just get an email from somebody in the team saying, yeah, could you help us with this one? But it's a very rewarding thing to be involved with when you do get asked.
Definitely. Right, I'm going to stop sharing now, Kevin, just so you know.
Yeah. I'm going to say we're actually at the end of our time, so I'd like to say thank you very much, Ian, for joining us tonight. Been very interesting, lots of questions tonight. So it's clearly a topic we've got a lot of interest in, and I know I had a really good number of people joining us this evening. So thank you for joining that. Just a reminder to everybody, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. It usually takes about a week for the HQ team to edit and get it published. And you've got a number of links and the forms to go to follow up if you want to follow up with Ian and the team afterwards. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for all your questions.
Thank you, and thank you for all the questions. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Good night.